Real quick here, let's go to the scoreboard. So you can go to anomalyaarchives.org and you can see the schedule for the rest of today and tomorrow, or rather the rest of the Saturdays between now and 2021. And we are fast approaching that $5,000 milestone. You can see Patty is getting closer and closer to that 5,000 mark. And once we hit that, that will trigger the $5,000 matching challenge grant, and we'll double that. We'll be up to $10,000. We'll be halfway to our goal. I know folks are hurting, so if you can give, please do. If you can't, don't worry about it. Just enjoy the material. But if you can help us spread the word, we could use the help. There's a lot of folks who don't even know that this thing's going on. We've done the best we can to get the word out, but you can go to anomalyarchives.org, find out all about our organization. You can see the great new merch that features the artwork of our good friend RPJ, Red Pill Junkie, aka, well, Miguel Romero. It's the other way around on the aka. And you can donate via GoFundMe, PayPal, or Facebook. We've got fundraiser pages for each of those channels. And at the website, of course, you can see the lineup of all the different speakers that are coming up. And so we actually have a little bit of a respite here before our next speaker, which is Paul H. Smith, talking about religious, mystical, and out-of-body experiences, how science thinks it has explained them, and why science is wrong. That's coming up at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. So we've got about 45 minutes of a surprise time for material here. I'm pleased to play some material here, but I did want to first let's see. We on the first Streamathon Saturday back on November 21st, we aired a really interesting 23-minute ambient piece by Massimo Teodorani. And the audio got kind of messed up. I think that I was still not sure how the Streamathon, or excuse me, the StreamYard service that we use to stream to YouTube and Facebook exactly works. And so I think it kind of messed up some of the audio, but we re-uploaded the file. So you can go to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/user/Anomaly Archives. And there in the video section, you can see the separate special upload of Massimo's work, and I highly recommend it. He is a great electronic musician. If you like electronic music or ambient music, I highly recommend you check that out. I think you'll really enjoy it. So go check that out. In the meantime, real quick, our next speaker is coming up at 5 o'clock Central Standard Time. So we got 45 minutes, and I'm going to go ahead and play a few other things. So we've got this big virtual drive-in theater happening each Saturday evening, and for that first Saturday, we had Paul Kimball give a great introduction with his lecture to his Eastlink Canada cable TV series Haunted, and we got to see 4 episodes of the Haunted TV series. And being down here in the lower contiguous states of the United States, had not seen the vast majority of his material, and of course, but had already been a fan of his work. So you can still go and watch those. They're available still for now. Those probably will be going away at the end of this year, at the end of the Streamathon. So if you haven't watched them, you should go check them out. Thank you, Paul. That is so generous of you, and everybody else that's been donating. Again, we could really use your help with the fundraiser. We are fast approaching our $5,000 goal, and hope that you can possibly give us some more with that. And I'm not used to begging. I'm not used to being a salesman. This isn't my day job. I wish it were. Maybe it will be someday. This is a completely volunteer effort. And thanks to all the volunteers who have helped get the word out, who have helped produce those wonderful intro videos that you've been seeing, and everything else that's helped bringing this together as a quality event. So I'm going to show a few more bits here of stuff that's a little bit rare. I don't know if any of this is available, but I mentioned coming up in the evening, we had on our second November 28th, we had Craig Baldwin's wonderful collage art movie Mock Up on Moo that was a stylized storytelling of L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons and Aleister Crowley. Of course, we've heard references to some of these people in other lectures. But coming up tonight are the creators of The Hill and the Hole, a fantastic adaptation of a Fritz Leiber short story featuring our own good friend, Adam Gorightly, crackpot historian extraordinaire, who's written many a fantastic and fascinating book looking at everything from the JFK assassination to Contactees. He's written a book with our good friend Greg Bishop on the Contactees, and he's also written on ritual magic and other subjects. And in fact, what we're going to show you right now is part of a rare presentation that he gave several years back. I believe, let me see if I can find the information on this. I believe this is from a special presentation from Skylar Alphagren's Lo-Fi, the League of Western Fortean Intermediatists mini-con in October 2008 in Los Angeles. I was not able to go to this, but this video was provided to us by Adam himself. And as I mentioned, it's a part of, it's not the entire lecture, but it's called "Were the Early UFO Contactees Ritual Magicians?" And I think you'll find this pretty interesting. And so we're going to go ahead and share that with you right now. Hope you stay tuned. And again, we'll be back at 5 o'clock. And we've got some other stuff after this special presentation by Adam Gorightly, who will be a special guest tonight with the creators of The Hill and the Hole, because of course Adam Gorightly is in The Hill and the Hole as a very interesting character. So hold tight, and I hope we can get this going. So stay right where you are.
Fully to the modern era of UFOs appears quite evident. Here's another dude. In the 1930s, this fellow, Guy Ballard, had a vision while hiking near Mount Shasta in Northern California. Ballard related that Saint Germain, appearing out of the void, tapped him on the shoulder and offered him a cup filled with pure electronic essence. Sounds like a 60s psychedelic, man. And so after drinking this essence and eating a tiny wafer of concentrated energy, Ballard felt himself surrounded by a white flame which formed a circle about 50 feet in diameter. Circle of light equates to me to the flying saucer mythos. Bear in mind this alleged incident occurred many years before flying saucers entered the popular lexicon. Enveloped in the white flame, Ballard and Saint Germain took a trip through the stratosphere. Ballard later wrote about this experience in a book called Unveiled Mysteries. And they also channeled Venusians and all this type of stuff.
They're still around. The I Am presence.
Are they?
Yeah, they're
up there. Yeah, they've got a
In Mount Shasta?
in here in Long Beach, they have a temple. They have them all over the world.
Yeah, he was popular at one time. He had they had a huge radio station that broadcast all across the country.
It became illegal actually for them to solicit. They can't. You can only find them now.
And this Ballard, he was associated with William Dudley Paley, who was a novelist and screenwriter in the 1920s. Paley became an admirer of Adolf Hitler and fascism during the 30s and 40s and started his own fascist group in the U.S. known as the Silver Shirts, which had chapters in nearly every state. Paley was also a channeler, and in 1950 he wrote a book entitled Starguest, which was probably the first collection of channeled messages from extraterrestrials published. Paley claimed that it was based on material he had received from the Space Brothers in the 1920s. According to Paley, the human race is the product of interbreeding between ape men and advanced extraterrestrial beings that migrated to Earth from, you guessed it, Sirius. UFO contactee George Hunt Williamson, remember Adamski's pal? He worked for Paley's white supremacist organization and magazine called Valor in the 1950s. So, yeah, Williamson, as I noted, also believed in this cosmic cosmology, which included Sirius in its scenario of otherworldly contact. From 48 to 58, paranormal researcher Andrea Puharich ran a research center called the Roundtable Foundation, carrying out experiments over the years with several famous psychics. In 1952, that pivotal year that seems to reoccur throughout this presentation, Puharich brought an Indian mystic named Dr. D.G. Vinod to his lab, where Vinod channeled the Nine, as they called them. The Nine presented themselves as a collective intelligence consisting of 9 entities that were presumably in touch with a cosmic intelligence. Kind of sounds like the same thing that Mark Probert and Meade Lane were contacting, that type of group of ascended masters, alien beings. A number of psychics and channelers worked with Puharich in the years to follow, many of them alleging contact with the Nine, the most famous being Uri Geller. I'm sure a lot of you heard in the early 70s. These otherworldly communications led to a group which Puharich oversaw called Lab 9, which included cutting-edge scientists, millionaires, industrialists, and leading politicians of the day. Among them, Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry actually wrote a screenplay based upon the Nine, so he was influenced by these groups. At a conference at Esalen, a famous New Agey retreat out there in Big Sur, California, one of the Lab 9 channelers divulged that the Nine originated from... Right. Puharich talked about opening a stargate through the Nine, which he later... Puharich talked about opening a gateway through the Nine, which he later called a stargate. The concept of a stargate is what Crowley presumably was talking about, that he opened up, and Jack Parsons and his bunch further enlarged. So in some weird way, Jack Parsons could be considered the modern father of ufology, and Aleister Crowley its spooky grandfather. More contacts here with Enoch. After having a vision featuring Enoch of the Bible, this dude, James Hertog, he's a pretty famous guy on the scene, claims to have come in contact with extraterrestrials in 1973, the same year that Philip K. Dick, Bob Wilson, and Doris Lessing were contacted by certain beings from Sirius. So like 47 and 92, 73 seems to be another key year in contactee lore. Due to the visions and extraterrestrial contacts, Hertog went on to write a book called The Keys of Enoch. Here we go with Enoch again, which embodies the spiritual teachings of his otherworldly benefactors. In the Lab 9 earthly hierarchy, Hertog was Puharich's second in command, a key player in this scene. We talked about 73. Also in 73, Dr. Timothy Leary Deering claimed telepathic contact with extraterrestrials, which he documented in this book called Starseed. During July and August of that year, while serving time at Folsom Prison, Leary formed a 4-person telepathy team. Synchronistically, these communications happened during the middle of the dog days of Sirius. Also in 73. Same time Leary was receiving a Starseed transmission, another psychedelic pioneer, Dr. John Lilly, started having his own series of interstellar communications with a network known as ECCO, which is an acronym for Earth Coincidence Control Office. These communications were achieved through the use of the drug ketamine. Also in 73, a Frenchman named Claude Voronihon experienced an encounter with this guy. Encountered with a small, bald, green-skinned fellow with a goatee on his chin and a halo over his head, who arrived in a spacecraft. The little green-skinned guy with the halo introduced himself as Yahweh, God to the Hebrews, and in fact turned out to be Claude's father. But I guess God's everyone's father. Anyway, Yahweh informed Claude that he had come to Earth to visit him specifically, and that Claude was the chosen one to spread the message of the Elohim, a race of aliens who created human kind by cloning them some 25,000 years ago. Yahweh cranked up his spaceship and took Claude at 7 times the speed of light, no less, to the Elohim's home, where he met up with Jesus, Buddha, and Moses, who apparently lived there. Anyway, at some time in this adventure, Claude was given a scented bath by 6 perfectly formed biological robot babes, who subsequently treated him to some steamy robot sex.
Didn't he have aliens on his race car too? Didn't he drive a? He was a race car driver.
He's been involved in all kinds of stuff.
Oh.
Rock musician and race cars, and he's a cool dude.
Yeah.
During the course of his initiation, Claude was appointed to be the Elohim's ambassador to Earth, and on his return adopted the name of Rael. This, of course, led to what some would term a saucer cult, known as the Raelians, who are into free love, which some have claimed has manifested itself as saucer sex orgies taking place behind closed doors at their secret Raelian compounds. Whatever the case, Raelians claim to have 55,000 members worldwide, which is probably bullshit. And also claim to have cloned a couple of human babies as well, which, yeah. So once again, but we see quite clearly the mystical and religious component of all this. I'd like to start a band called Marshall Applewhite's Suicidal Mothership. 1973. We're talking 1973 again. Applewhite and Bonnie Lou Nettles, a.k.a. Bo and Pete, began their strange odyssey, which, as we know, ended in the greatest UFO tragedy of all time. The death ritual, perhaps? So, when I started looking into this, out of curiosity, I did a little internet surfing and came across a site called temporaldoorway.com, which is a site dedicated to statistical analysis of UFO sightings dating way back to 1896. And I pulled up this chart, and going from left to right, you can see the years that were significant number in terms of number of sightings. So we have, there's 47. We talked about 1947. That was a key year. We see that first spike, and that's when Kenneth Arnold has his famous sighting. There was the Maury Island sighting, which is some consider really the first sighting, the Roswell crash. That was in 47. The next spike is 52, and I talked all about 52. That's when George Adamski had his sightings, and really a lot of that stuff went on. George Van Tassel, all those guys. 54 stands on record as the greatest year of UFO sightings. However, the majority of these were in France, and they don't count. So the next significant year was 1967. Where are we at there? 67, the Summer of Love, the dawning of the Age of Aquarius. Anomalist researcher John Kill noted that the previous year, 66, experienced an almost overwhelming wave of unidentified object and creature sightings throughout the continent. We're getting into some Fortean territory here. But you don't see that here as a spike. So yeah, this year doesn't depict the creature sightings. This happened in 1966, and one of them was later referred to as the Jersey Devil. It was seen many times in the South Jersey Pine Barrens. In Ontario, Canada, there were numerous reports of big black cats with hairy wings, not to mention the start of the whole Mothman craze, which started in 1966. I might add, when 1966 is when Anton LaVey inaugurated the Church of Satan, which may or may not have any bearing on all this, and he dubbed 1966 as year one on the satanic calendar. For instance, just perhaps, another instance of ritual magic conducted and ostensibly influencing our perceptions of the world, this ritual which LaVey did, ushering in these monster sightings of 66. Shortly after came the Summer of Love, as I said, the Age of Aquarius, so there was indeed some strange and powerful vibes affecting all of us who were alive during that period. LSD and the other mind-expanding drugs taken by the nation's youth that were taking everybody by storm. It was 67 that the U.S. government outlawed LSD. Now, many of you probably consider my reference to Anton LaVey and his Church of Satan somehow being connected to UFO sightings as, so much hot air. But here's an interesting photo I stumbled across surfing the web of Anton LaVey hanging out sometime in the 70s with Amy Mackell and Jacques Vallée. They're the two most prominent French UFO researchers of that time. Vallée is on the left there, Vallée in the center, and Mackell on the right. The French scientist in Close Encounters of the Third Kind was based on Dr. Vallée, computer scientist. Vallée was one of the first researchers who really started entertaining theories that UFO sightings may indeed be connected deeply to mysticism, and that the experience itself has been going on since time immemorial, and that in many respects it is an ongoing product of human consciousness. The likes of Vallée and Vallée and Robert Anton Wilson, who was mentioned earlier, were all part of a loose-knit group during that period of artists, writers, and cutting-edge scientists hanging out in California in the mid-70s that formed a sort of invisible college, looking into this interconnection of UFOs, ritual magic, quantum physics, these type of things. Another member of this unofficial and loose-knit group was Jacques Zarfati, a quantum physicist too. In 1952, the year we talked about so much, in 52, at the age of 12, Zarfati received a phone call from a mechanical-sounding voice on the other end of the line that said it was a computer on board a flying saucer who contacted him to illuminate his young mind. This is a young lad of 12. This alien contact, or whatever it was, in turn led to Zarfati's groundbreaking research. I've gotten a bit off on a tangent here, but what I'm trying to illustrate is this network of strange bedfellows involved in the UFO story. The coupling of Jacques Vallée and Anton LaVey is certainly a curious one. Vallée has suggested in some of his writings that an occult secret society is deeply involved in the UFO phenomena, which sounds much like what Crowley, Parsons, and those of that ilk were up to. Continuing on, guess what year provides the next significant spike? 73. It seems like I already covered this. But 73, the same year Larry Wilson, Phil Dick, and the others I named were having their otherworldly contacts with the Sirius star system. So you see 73 there. So indeed, something seemed to be in the air at that time. The next spike is 1978, when I had my own UFO encounter. Then after that, you can see sightings have slowed down some, though 1995 was a decent year. So in the modern world of ufology, the most famous contactee is Whitley Strieber. Strieber himself doesn't care for the term abductee. He prefers participant, which I find kind of interesting. Prior to his initial alien abduction, Strieber was a member of the Gurdjieff Foundation, a self-transformational organization dedicated to a system of techniques devised by mystic George Gurdjieff. Strieber believed that the techniques he learned in that training, particularly a form of double-tone chanting, enabled him to visualize more clearly his encounters with the alien grays. Interestingly enough, Gurdjieff claimed contact with beings from using the same double-tone method of chanting, which could be related to Enochian chanting. Paranormal researchers have long noted unusual electromagnetic activity in the areas where UFO encounters have occurred. These areas are called, fittingly enough, UFO windows, where windows and other weird sightings occur. If you look into the history, you'll discover thousands of accounts of ghosts, demons, monsters, and UFOs encountered in these window areas. Occultists describe these areas as gateways, weak spots in the Earth's magnetic field through which beings from other space-time continuums enter into our reality. It is within these UFO windows that a superspectrum exists, according to John Keel. These areas have also been called hotspots. Loch Ness, presumably, is one such area where the fabled Loch Ness monster has been rumored to exist. That's a hotspot area. Loch Ness was also the home for a period of Aleister Crowley. Another famous UFO hotspot window area, whatever you want to call it, is Whitley Strieber's cabin in upstate New York, where he had many of his gray alien encounters. Other people who have visited Strieber's cabin claim to observe strange phenomenon. Now, a common description of UFOs is that they change colors, which suggested to John Keel that they are specters traveling through our visible light spectrum. And this is exactly the phenomena I saw during my own UFO sighting, this changing of colors. The superspectrum theory contends that UFOs exist at frequencies beyond visible light, but that they can adjust their frequency and descend into the electromagnetic spectrum, just as you can turn the dial of a radio up or down and go to different frequencies. What the UFO frequency, so when this UFO frequency nears that of visible light, according to Keel, it will first appear as a purplish blob, and as it moves further down the scale, it changes to blue and then to bluish green and so on, finally to white. And this is how many UFO sightings unfold. UFOs, as Keel suggested, are energies of a different frequency. Like tuning into a radio, you pick up and amplify only the signal coming in at a certain point or frequency of the electromagnetic spectrum. Your eyes are also receivers, tuned to very specific wavelengths, as your brain is a receiver. So bear in mind that paranormal investigators have often used infrared detection systems which reveal otherwise invisible activities. Altered states, such as those produced by ritual magic or the use of mind-altering drugs, are other possible methods of seeing into the superspectrum, which is akin to someone using infrared goggles at night to see what the naked eye cannot. This, in essence, is what psychics claim to do. They have simply fine-tuned, that ability to pick up these different waves and frequencies that normal people can't see. Interestingly enough, George Van Tassel described the way he communicated to the aliens as channeling, and said it was like tuning in a television to decode an electromagnetic signal. The superspectrum theory contends that once these waves and frequencies are filtered through a person's consciousness and belief system, that what comes out on the other end of perception may be an angel if someone is, religiously inclined, or alien beings and flying saucers, or whatever we view them through the filters of our belief system. So in essence, these entities appear to be temporary manifestations or manipulations of energy. Keel likes to use the word transmogrifications to describe them. Transmogrification is reminiscent of what the Native Americans called the shapeshifter, what the Tibetans called tulpas, entities that can change shape and form. And this is how I view the UFO phenomena, as an intelligence that can take on many shapes, not only flying saucers, but a vast spectrum of colorful characters, limited only by our imaginations. So in finishing, to answer my own provocative question, were the early UFO contactees ritual magicians? I would answer a resounding yes. In the sense that we all create our own reality. Who is the master who makes the grass green, as the Buddhist saying goes? We are, of course, through the lenses of our perception. And to take this theory one step further, I would contend that the electromagnetic spectrum also plays a part in the creation of the enigma, acting in a symbiotic manner, interacting with human consciousness. The UFOs I saw behaved like critters moving through a light spectrum, changing colors and size, each one different from the other, some even cartoonish looking with multicolored propellers spinning in the air. Perhaps what I call the magician's intent opens the door to the superspectrum. When I recounted my own UFO encounter, I mentioned a pivotal moment leading up to the event when my friend and I said to each other, what if we saw a UFO right now? No one would ever believe us because we were under the influence. So in essence, I think what we did, I believe, was plant the seeds for a magical ritual to unfold, however unwittingly, and unfold it did. Prior to this, his famous UFO sighting, George Adamski went out intentionally hunting UFOs before he even saw that one, which brings to mind the concept of the magician's intent, that Adamski was first forming the intent in his mind that he wanted to see UFOs is key here. Seek and ye shall find. Now just think what can happen if you intentionally planted that seed and use these various methods to alter your consciousness with the intent of conjuring UFOs. You might too then be able to see beyond the veil and inside the superspectrum, and the appearance of UFOs might be the end result. But be careful what you wish for and how you tend the garden of your consciousness.
All right, folks. Yeah, that's some rare footage from back in 2008 of our good friend, crackpot historian Adam Gorightly, giving a very provocative lecture on the idea of the early contactees actually being ritual magicians and possibly opening a portal that ushered in the modern flying saucer wave, and has had ongoing effects and influence on our society because of that. Well, you know, might not also know, Adam Gorightly is a musician and records a lot of interesting music. He's performed by himself alongside some other musicians over the years at various conferences, including the Retro UFO Conference, and has released a CD. Where is that? I think I've got it right here. Yes. Adam Gorightly, Transmissions from a Dying Planet. And we have a local friend of mine, Floyd Anderson, who loved to put together videos for our pal Adam. And here is one. This is actually a duo called Agenda 23, a video by Floyd Anderson. And this song, Mind Traps, was composed and arranged by Agenda 23, who is Adam Gorightly, and Chris Wilhoit. I'm not sure if that's the correct pronunciation, but that's Gorightly on vocals and synthesizer, and Chris on synthesizer, 5-string bass, electric guitar, etc., with lyrics by Adam Gorightly. So here we go with Mind Traps.
Mind traps to me, they're just mind traps to me. Overpopulation means starvation for mankind. Mind traps to me, mind traps to me. Fast pollution, the dissolution of mankind. Mind traps to me, they're just mind traps to me. mass migration to the stars. Here we go, we're flying to the stars.
All right. Thank you, folks. And from one atom to another, a good friend of mine is psychedelic visual artist Ken Adams. You might know him from his works with Terence McKenna on the amazing Alien Dreamtime, Strange Attractor, and other works. We're looking forward to a screening of his Terence McKenna documentary and a visual exploration of his life and afterlife called Imaginatrix. We've shown the preview of a couple of times, but Ken does a lot of work for various nonprofits, and here is a quick promo that he did for another very important archive that I think you should know about if you don't already.
You know, we're archiving it, we're virtualizing it. What it is that the human neural net, the unconscious of the species, is actually being hardwired as an artifact. We're pouring glass and gold and silicon down the microtubules of the racial imagination, and as it were making a kind of casting of the state of the human imagination at the close of the millennium. And to what degree this imaging of ourselves in silicon will ever reach a limit is hard to tell. I mean, we've begun with the past. You know, we're archiving it, we're virtualizing it, we're creating databases that allow us to stroll around in it. But more and more time will be consumed, and eventually the only choice will be to allow it to flow over into the present. You know, we're archiving it, we're virtualizing it.
So yeah, Ken Adams is a dear friend of mine and the Anomaly Archives, and I hope you'll check out his stuff, and we're looking forward to showing you more of his work. And in fact, here's another video. If you've been watching, you've seen a couple of his clips already, and this is another one that I like that's got music to it. So. Oh, I love it. Like the dancing Santa. Yeah, getting the holiday spirit there with some electronic music. Okay, folks, we're getting close to our next presentation at 5 o'clock. That's Paul H. Smith with a very interesting lecture coming up soon. And, you know, our volunteers are helping in so many ways and coming up with a wide variety of interesting visuals for us. You've seen the intro to the Streamathons and the banners that we're using. That's all thanks to our volunteers, Victor Criterion, and other volunteers like I Need the Excess, and those we've got folks spreading the word on social media, etc. But they're very creative people, and here is another creation of theirs that I've been wanting to share. You've heard of AI created art? Well, you can come up with some very strange things. So real briefly, here is some artificial intelligence witch speech.
This passage is in a book I read in my head years ago. It told of dark tales of forbidden knowledge. Witches and warlocks were fighting the forces of evil. I was asked about 3 different reasons that a witch was being hunted, including that she was a victim, because she was a witch. It took me a very long time to get to this point. I understand that a fairy tale gives life meaning to just about every aspect of a woman. The story she refers to has to do with how someone has been raised before. It can be as simple as whether she was born on 9th December. She can, more or less. The nature of women's lives depends on many different motivations, many of which aren't very meaningful to her. The fairy tale is the perfect example of that. She can't be allowed into her dreams, in her dreams. And so she is placed into a system where she will live at home, in her dream room, in her dream house, in her dream room, and so in a world where she is a witch. It's that simple, but it helps her not to be afraid of such things. Her childhood memories of being raised by a witch and having many nightmares and being scared of everything that goes on in her dreams come back to life. There is also something else that is very important about the fairy tale, however. It lets her live in her dreams because she has the potential of being one of the people who does not have a fairy tale to make life seem strange, like a fairy. If she could talk to a child about the story that her fairy tale would be, that would be incredible. She can talk to other children as well. What she can learn to be as a fairy as much as that of a child is as simple as that of a child. I'm an angel, but I am also a witch, because I have been bitten by an angel and it was me that made me that she. This happens frequently. The words are spoken in the same way in the stories, except it can be very simple. This is very simple. That is just the message. I mean, that is, a fairy tale about being a witch, and a witch is a different thing from a fairy tale like the word purse. In the end, this message is true, but it is only true that the word you used is true, and it is often used for different uses. As many people are aware, there is this idea of a witch and a witch in this way. This is the same idea that you use, the same idea that people say it is, the same idea. The reason that this idea is true is because many people do not believe in a witch and find it hard to believe her, and this is very simple. You do not even have a clue that it is so. I will talk about those elements myself, the way that we have to believe in a thing, and when we have an idea of it, we don't think of the words, or how we believe. We think of those ideas as simple, easy things, in that we only see it if we have a glimpse of a thing, or if we see another thing or another thing. And so in the same way that we are able to be in a society built from human-made ideas. I am here to offer you a brief recap of that process, which is that we have been trained to believe and live with a myth. Before the word truth was invented in the late Middle Ages, most people believed that a man could tell the truth that man could know. But this is no longer true, and so they did. The reason you are here today is you are a man who knows and works within a myth. You are always searching for the truth, and you are always searching for the right thing. Your own belief in a myth is how you will interpret it in a way that makes sense to you. Your own belief in a myth is how you interpret it. After all, if it's true, you are always searching for the right thing.